Alright, you haven't answered my other question yet in the comments about what you're comparing it to for superior. Superior requires some type of relative metric. If you're comparing it to Bitcoin, well, it's a better store of value, which I'll explain. But if you're comparing it to something like Crypto.com, it's not meant to facilitate payments, it's not a blockchain, it's not a peer-to-peer system. So is Hex a superior blockchain? No, it's not a blockchain. Is Hex a superior method of peer-to-peer transactions? No, it's not meant for that. Is Hex a superior store of value? Absolutely. Hex is designed to not only replicate but improve upon the network security of Bitcoin, but also the certificate of deposit financial market. First, let's talk about CDs. Let's talk about banks, and let's talk about the Federal Reserve. When you boil down investing your money in a savings account with banks, all that's really happening at the end of the day is that you're increasing their balance sheet and they're taking a loan out from the Federal Reserve. In some way, shape, or form, directly or indirectly, your interest is coming from inflation from the Federal Reserve. The banks are nothing but huge middlemen taking giant cuts off of the inflation that trickles down to you. So what Hex does is it cuts that giant middleman out. There's no longer a bank in between you and the inflation. Of course, one of the many problems of the Federal Reserve is excessive inflation. Fortunately, Hex caps their inflation at 3.69%. And if that inflation rate still sounds high to you, keep in mind that Bitcoin's inflation rate at the best time to buy a decade ago was 50%. Then it was 25%, then it was 12.5%, so on and so forth, until just recently, it's now less than what Hex's inflation is. So people were buying Bitcoin at better rates than today when inflation was highest. Now the only way to earn that inflation in the first place is obviously to stake your Hex, and you gotta stake it for a long time if you want to earn those really juicy rates. With Hex, you can stake up to 15.2 years, which is absolutely amazing. Most cryptos don't let you stake that long. And much like the banks, there's a system implemented in Hex to try to incentivize you playing by the rules, sticking to the promise you made when you signed the Hex smart contract. Just like how Bitcoin miners are rewarded with Bitcoin inflation by providing network security, Hex stakers are rewarded the same way in Hex. So as you can see, Bitcoin and banks reward you with inflation for holding up the price. Now what Bitcoin doesn't do, that CDs do, is penalize you for breaking your contract. There are penalties for trying to withdraw your Hex early and late. This system helps to ensure fairness and prevents anyone from gaming the system to just permanently locking up their funds and absorbing all of the inflation. Now, why lock up your funds for so long in the first place? Obviously, it's for the compound interest. Remember, your interest is coming directly from inflation, and that inflation is compounded by the supply. Imagine Bitcoin lets you lock in your mining inflation rate for a decade, and the halvings don't affect